Hi.
How's your day so far, Patrice?
It's going great. How about you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining me. Um, for folks joining, once again, I am Lauren with Too Many, and this is part of the Me Voices and Friends series. Joined here with from the Instagram page, Survivors with Color. And I love her page. She always has such poignant and relatable insight and really cool graphics. So if you're not following Survivors of Color, please do that. And I will pass over to Patrice. We're going to talk a little bit today about sexual coercion.
Well, hi everybody. So I thought it was important to I guess open up a discussion about sexual coercion because it's something that we all have experienced at one point in our lives. Um, at least in one relationship, we've all experienced it. And for overall, if you guys aren't aware of what sexual coercion is, it's pretty much any unwanted sexual activity that happens when you're either like forced or tricked or even like threatened into sexual activity like without it being how do you say it, unphysical, if that makes sense. And so like ways for a person to do it is like they do it as if they're like, okay, like threatening to end the relationship with you, or if they'll say things like, oh well, you did it last time, so why can't you do it this time? Or they'll say things like, you know, um, well, we're in a relationship, so why can't you do this for me? Or they'll try to say, oh, well, my ex did this, why can't you do it? And I think I was telling her, Lauren earlier, is that we kind of like make it a normal thing in relationships rather than it being like something negative. Like it's known as something that's like, okay, like this is what goes on in every single relationship, and so this is what you should basically accept. And I guess I wanted to give you guys like a few examples for those of you who aren't aware of like what it may look like. And I wrote some down. And then one says, like they make you feel like you owe them something. And that's because you're in a relationship, because you've had sex before, because you went home with them, but so you automatically consent because you went home with them basically. And because they've spent money on you. And I think I think what I find frustrating about it is that when you try to have the conversation with people who are, I guess, hesitant about it, they try to find ways to downplay it. And they because for me, like if you look at the definitions, sexual coercion is pretty much similar to sexual assault, or pretty much rape, because they're basically forcing you to have sex with them without without your consent. And we all know consent is is a happy and enthusiastic yes. And I think we need to teach other people how important it is to respect each other's boundaries. And I think like we grow up and like they say, oh, girls need to be more assertive, and that men need to be more respectful. But men could be respectful, but it still goes along the lines of them respecting your boundaries without them trying to take it out on you. So I don't know if any of you guys have experienced that. I don't know if you have you?
Absolutely. And you're afraid to say no, or
Mm-hmm.
scared to say no, or they threaten you, or they supply you with drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
So more likely to say yes. All of that is coercion and
Yeah.
coercion, and it's not okay.
Yeah, and you can say, and it's like you can say no 1,000 times, and they still try to find ways, to get you to say yes. And I don't see how, you know, that why how people can think that way, because it's like, why would you want to proceed with something if the person is clearly not interested? And, by you whining and threatening them, that doesn't, I don't see how that still makes a person want to pursue that.
My friend thinks you a good person because I think that it is not normal, healthy to,
Yeah,
I'm going to pressure someone. I'm going to put my needs and wants above
exactly.
comfort and safety.
Exactly.
I see a comment that just came in. It's not only men. My best friend got sexually forced into something by our best girlfriend.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's true. That's true. You're absolutely right. It can. It doesn't matter like what the gender is. Anyone is capable of doing that. So I don't want it to be something where it's just directed specifically at men. Like maybe it is. It's mainly like they're the majority, but it's still women still can do that too. I think and another thing is that a lot with relationships, a lot of times like I said, money is involved. Where they say well, I bought you this purse, or I did this for you, so you have to do this for me, or sometimes they'll use excuses like, well, this is what I need and this is what, you have to do for me because those are basically that's what I want. And I think they try to use like just certain things against you. Like even if they threaten to like end the relationship if you don't have sex with them, or they'll say, well, I can't be with somebody who doesn't want to have sex with me.
Or you don't love me enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Thought you cared about me. Maybe I should go find someone else who
Exactly.
show me they love me. Or
Yeah.
I think it's also really common with LGBTQ relationships, especially people who are not out. Coercion can look like, if you don't have sex with me, if you don't do this with me, I'm going to out you. I'm going to
Yes.
tell people. Same thing with, secrets. People will use
Mhm.
someone has actually just commented in. It was like they're reading my mind. It's all about power and control.
Exactly.
And they will use power and control to get what they want at any cost. And
Yeah.
it, and someone else just wrote, people can ruin people's lives for their pleasure for just a couple of minutes.
Exactly. And it's like, why can't you just go to someone who actually wants to do that instead of trying to force someone else to do it who's not interested? And it's like just because a person, if just because they said yes, like in the beginning, and they change their mind, like, that's what you have to go with. I think it's important to see, and I don't know how we can like change the conversation about it, just because the fact that people think it's normal for that to happen. Like just because it's normal doesn't make it okay. And I think that we have to start teaching like people while they're young, because consent can be taught, as early as the age of 3. And I think it's important for families to be more open about it, because they kind of like just kind of sweep things under the rug without even thinking about the consequences of it in the long run. So I don't know. I I think with like just from my experiences, it's all like sexual coercion was like almost an everyday occurrence, and it would be like arguments over and over again. Like the argument would last over an hour, like until I was like, okay, let's get it over with, and then it gets frustrating after a while. And I think when that happens, it makes you makes you not trust the person anymore. It makes you not even comfortable with the person, or it makes you not even want to interact with them sexually at all in the future, because that's happened. And it's pretty unfortunate.
It's unfortunate, and absolutely, if someone is backing you for sex,
Hmm.
and that's coercion, that's not consent. And how can you feel safe with someone who is actively disrespectful? in your boundaries.
Exactly.
And you deserve to be safe, whether it's someone that you're in a relationship with, someone that
Mm-hmm.
you met. Safety is the most important thing. And if they're disrespecting your safety, that's not okay. And I do think
Mm-hmm.
coercion has, you're absolutely right, it's so normalized. And I loved when you said that, because it's, normal doesn't mean that it's okay.
Yeah.
Um, it and coercion is so normalized. And someone also just wrote in, I hear this a lot, and I think it's very common that folks who have been coerced and didn't give consent, since it's not talked about enough, I think they walk away from that experience traumatized and confused, but not really knowing how to put a label on it,
Yeah, exactly.
using a bad sexual experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these conversations, and I was so glad when you said you wanted to talk about coercion, because it is assault. And that the fact that coercion is assault needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so sorry that that was your experience, that
Yeah.
when you were talking about it. And for everyone else who has experienced any type of violence and coercion, um, you deserve better. You deserve
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
better.
we all do. We definitely do. Yeah, I think when people who are the ones who are being coercive, it's like they're the ones who want you to respect their boundaries, and they want you to just go along with what they say, but they can't return that same decency. Like they want you to respect them, but they can't, do the same for you.
It's quite unfortunate. It's really sad, because it really does. It's traumatic when someone disrespects your boundaries. It's way more than unwanted sexual contact.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's not even the I don't for me it's not even like the sexual act in itself, it's just the mental part. You know what I mean? I think people think it's like, don't really think about that, because it's like when you have something traumatic happen to you, you can't get over that. Like it's like, yeah, you can live with it or whatever and try to push it under the rug, but it's always going to be there, like in your mind. And like you can always find like different ways to I guess to cope with it, but it's something that is just always going to be there. It's not like we want it to be there. It's just something that it's just a memory that you know that's just not gonna go away, no matter how you know what I mean. Like no matter how hard you try to like ignore it.
Isn't that the sad truth? It's always part of you when, the goal is to, you know, find as much closure for yourself and save
Exactly.
yourself, but it stays with you. I think it changes you. Um, Now let's see, I completely agree with the mental aspect. The gaslighting affects every part of life, even after you realize what happened, especially if you convince yourself that it was your fault.
Mhm.
Totally. And there's so much gaslighting. I mean, that's kind of coercion, is
Yeah.
gaslighting personified.
Yeah. Playing the victim, all that stuff. Like they make excuses to kind of make it seem like they didn't do anything wrong. Like you're the one who was in the wrong, basically.
And that's the shame, because it's not the victim shame. It's not the person's being coerced shame, perpetrators shame. And it's not, and it's their fault. It's not your fault. So for those who are listening in,
Mhm.
it is not your fault. You
It's
didn't
not.
do wrong. If you said yes after 15 no's, it's not your fault. That's not a real yes.
It's not. It's really not. Somebody said, "How do we learn to feel okay with the lack of punishment our attacker got?" Um, I don't. I don't know how to. I personally don't want to answer that because I still feel that way. I'm not like okay per se, but I'm trying to find ways to, I guess, be okay with it, especially for my situation because the person, he comes from a family of like lawyers. So that automatically was like, well, I mean, what can I do? Like, and it's just unfortunate with our, criminal justice system. They don't, I feel like they don't take sexual violence seriously, or they want you to do all this stuff just to prove it. When it's like, well, I'm trying to prove it, but it's just not enough for you. Especially when you have somebody who is in a high position or knows somebody in a high position, they're able to, to sweep that stuff under the rug. They're able to make that stuff disappear. And so I don't know how to, I guess, tell someone to be okay with it because I'm personally not okay with it. And I'm still learning to, be okay with it.
Hard. It's not fair. I don't know many people who could honestly say that they're okay if their abuser never had to be held accountable, because
Yeah.
it isn't fair. It often feels so much and is the reality that they are thriving with their life and
Yeah.
see them continue to rise, and meanwhile you're just
You're
simply
struggling.
exactly.
Yeah. I feel that way. I'm like, why is this person, why is all this good stuff happening to this person when they, when I feel like, they don't deserve it. And, I believe in karma, but it's like, I think the thing about it is that we want to see the karma happen. You know what I mean? We want it to happen right then and there, but we have to kind of just let nature take its course. So I'm always like, I hope, something, not to sound like that, but I hope something happens to where that person gets, their karma if they haven't already.
Girl, I hear you.
Yeah.
And for folks who relate to that, I just want to say it doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a human.
Yeah.
Every right and to want to have your abuser held accountable, to have some responsibility, even just a slither of what
Mhm.
you've gone through. And
Exactly.
you don't deserve to be hurt. You don't deserve to have your life interrupted. You don't owe your body any, whether it's kissing, hand holding, sex,
Hmm.
to anybody. And, I'm sorry if that was taken away from you. And you have a right to change your mind. And
Exactly.
you're not a tease if you withdraw consent. Your safety, your well being is number one priority, and no one has the right to take that away from you, unfortunately.
Yeah. You don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. That's the biggest thing. Because I think we have the right to our own bodies. We have the right to do whatever it is that we feel comfortable and happy about. And despite the way that another person feels about it, you still have to do what you feel is best for you. And I think it makes it hard in relationships because it's like you're trying to please the other person, or you don't want to start an argument, or you're tiptoeing around, basically not being yourself, so you don't have to be put in that situation again. But sometimes it's hard to avoid an argument, or even sometimes when it's going to happen, like when the person's going to try to engage in some kind of sexual activity with you, and you're trying to find ways to get out of that situation. But sometimes it makes it difficult, especially if you're living with that person. So,
Constantly watching ourselves and living in fear.
yeah, yeah, and that was my experience. Like, I'm glad I'm not in that situation anymore. Like, I feel like I look back on it and I'm like, I don't know how I got through that. I really don't, but I'm glad that I did. I'm glad that I did. I need to get the hell from out of there, so I'm glad. I couldn't do it.
I'm really glad that you did. I know that none of that was easy, and
Hmm.
leave is not easy. So I'm really glad that you got it.
I want to say, like, when I think when you're in any kind of, like, I guess when it comes to like domestic violence or just when you're in any situation where you're living with somebody who is who you're not who you're afraid of, who you're trying to get away from, I think it's important to come up with some kind of plan to leave if you are ready to leave, like if you can leave. Because for me, what I like, it was for my personal situation, what I had to do was I had to slowly take clothes from out of there, out of the apartment. Like every time I would leave, it would be like one or two pieces of clothing I would take from out of there and then, put it into wherever I was going until I had nothing else left. And also the person didn't know that was happening because he was just, all into himself. So he wasn't very aware of his surroundings. But I think just coming up with some kind of plan to leave is very essential in actually, executing that move. So
Thank you for sharing that. That's a really good tip. And
one or two.
that's brilliant. Really, thank you. I'm going to be sharing with that people in my work. That's, I'm glad that worked.
And what I did was I the like stuff like toothbrushes and stuff, I took that last. Stuff that made it like obvious that you weren't trying to be there. I took that, at the last moment, just so that it wasn't so obvious. Because clothing is okay, but like when it comes to like, like your toiletries and stuff like that, I feel like that's something that you have to take last, just so it's not obvious.
That makes sense. And maybe is if you have to just leave it. And
Yeah, that's true. That too. Yeah, but at the moment I was homeless, so I didn't really, that's all I had.
sure, I get that. I do
Yeah,
make light of that. At all.
yeah. Because for
Able.
me, I use humor to kind of like, make light of a situation because that's just the only way I know how to do it without falling apart. Like I have to, be humorous about it in a way, even though I don't really feel that way, but you know, it's just to stop from like being like, sobbing or like crying or anything like that.
It's a good coping skill to
Yeah,
have.
yeah, it is. It works for me, but I don't know. I'm still trying to find, different ways to do it.
That actually kind of leads me to there was a couple of people that reached out with questions.
Mm-hmm.
One is, how can you stay sane when you are not believed? That is really, really tough.
Yeah.
It's another trauma. It's another betrayal right after a huge trauma and betrayal of the assault. And, I'm truly sorry. We're truly sorry for folks who are
Yeah.
not. Just know that we believe you, and you can always reach out to us, and you will always have someone that believes you. But that's hard, especially it's often whether it's your family, your friends, your community, people that you would expect to have believed you and supported you. And so when they don't believe you, it's again another trauma, another betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
Stay sane with that. It's certainly not an easy task.
And especially when they question you about it too, or they try to find, they're like, well, why didn't you do this, or why didn't you, you know what I mean? And I think that also makes it hard because you're like, I can't, there's certain things you just can't make up. Like, when you experience certain things, you just can't make it up to where, and so it makes it hard. It's hard when someone questions something like that you share with them, and I think as far as being sane, you're right. It's hard because you have so many things going through your mind. You're trying to figure out, okay, who can I trust at this point? Because if I told this person and they didn't believe me or they just questioned me, it's like, well, who else can I go to? And I think it's important to kind of find ways to, I guess, advocate for yourself. Because in some people's cases, they don't have anybody to do that for them. So I guess trying to find ways to, I don't know. I guess try to find ways to, I don't know. I guess you could say like just try to take it day by day. and try to find keep yourself busy and find things that make you happy to where you're kind of in a positive space. Because for me, it was just like, okay, I have to figure out a way to move on in some sort of way. I fully haven't, because it took me maybe 5 years for me to fully acknowledge it. Because for me, I looked at it as, okay, it was just a bad experience. Let me just move on. But I think it's one of the things you just have to take one day at a time and reach out to. I mean, there's so many resources or just different people you can reach out to. Just, I mean, because sometimes just having somebody listen to you is it goes a long ways. So
I think we start to heal when we feel heard. And
hmm
it sometimes, unfortunately, it can be really challenging to find a supportive person, but there are people out there who care and who will do. And I mean, this community on social media is, I feel like I have found my people, so many people that
yeah,
real life, but have given me more support than a lot of people in my real life.
exactly.
That's one of the many reasons I love this community so much is, and, you included Patrice is even though our experiences are different, we
hmm
get it, and we
Yeah,
each other. And so when you're trying to stay sane, just remember that you are not crazy. First off, you're not crazy.
exactly.
You are sane. Anything you are feeling is a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. Someone harming you is not normal. You reacting in any way that your trauma manifests is
It's
normal,
normal. Yeah.
and you're not. Um, let's see.
Yeah, you choose to heal however you feel necessary. Like there's no like handbook on how to heal from this. It's just whatever works best for you. Really, like I mean, even like when it comes to like self care, like it's literally care of yourself. Like do whatever it is that you deem necessary, to feel good or to heal from whatever it is that you're healing from. It doesn't matter, how it affects. For me, it doesn't matter how it affects other people. As long as you're okay. That's all that matters. So it's important to just find things that make you happy.
And, after assault, after an abuse, it might feel like nothing makes you feel happy. So
Yeah,
it's anything that doesn't make you feel worse.
exactly.
um, and I also just wanted to, um, someone wrote, educating yourself about healthy boundaries. I love that. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. Yes. I think education and understanding trauma, understanding, like even just all of you who are taking part in this Instagram live, being able to kind of learn more about sexual violence and trauma education. And for me, that's been very enlightening, understanding that our brain, when we are traumatized, when we have a threat to our survival, our executive go offline. So a
Yeah.
lot of people blame themselves for freezing. It is literally your brain trying to protect yourself. It's like
It
if
is.
a bear, you would freeze. You're not going to blame yourself. It's the same thing. And for me, like just understanding different facets of our brain and how
hmm
act, that's also really helped me kind of stay in my journey, because it's like, okay, like there's a reason for this.
Exactly. And it's like before things happen, you assume that you're gonna react a certain way. You're like, well, if this happens to me, I'm gonna react this way. But you honestly, you won't know until you're put in that situation. You really don't. Because for me, like I didn't realize the whole freezing thing until like maybe like a year or two later. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. That's why I say like it reminds me of like those scenes in movies where like it's like some kind of like an accident or something, and everything just like is in slow motion. You're just like looking around like you're stuck, but you can still see what's going on, you know. And you're like kind of like for me it was like I was like talking to myself on the inside, but it's but you're still like everything else was just like standing still.
And it's
Yeah. So it's It's, I mean, yeah, we all react differently, and like, there's no wrong way to react to it. You know, because you however you feel is completely okay. You know, no one can tell you how you. No one should tell you how to feel about something that happened to you. You know, because they wouldn't want nobody telling them about what happened to them, like how to react to what happened to them. So I think that's another important thing when it comes to that.
100%. Um, and since we were talking a little bit about some of the trauma responses, if it's okay with you, if we go over the other three while we're here, and then thought I'd see if anyone has any other questions. If you guys want to type it in, I'm loving this conversation. Thank you all for being here. Um, yeah, so we all have different trauma responses, and they are often formed in childhood based on childhood experiences, and they're wired into your brain. So it's not like we're deciding how to have a trauma
Yeah.
response. Fight or flight are often talked about as kind of the most common, but I think that freeze, which we just talked about a little bit, is not talked about enough, and neither is trauma response, which is fawn
Yes.
or appease. That's just trying to make the danger stop at all costs, and sometimes
Hmm.
it looks like befriending your abuser
Yeah,
or
that's
doing
so relatable.
pacify and pacify them to stop the abuse, and especially folks who I think who were people pleasers and had to maybe keep the peace with their parents or try to stay out of trouble, always trying to please, abusive parents or people in authority growing up, you know, you're more likely to respond to the fawn response. And it's really hard in all of these responses to realize that it's your fault. And the fawn response, even if you don't like what's happening, somehow in your brain, you're like, if I do this, maybe if I even have sex with my abuser again, to try to make it normalize, that would be an example of fawning.
Yeah.
You normalize what happened by befriending it so
Yeah.
you can placate and take away the danger.
And I'm learning that you can experience more than one of those responses, during a traumatic experience. And I didn't at first I didn't know that was possible. Like, I thought it was just like, it's either one or the other. But I didn't, like I said, I just realized that you can experience, more than one. Because for me, it was like, okay, it was the freeze response, and then right afterwards, it was like the fawn response. Like, I ended up being the one comforting him because he started crying, basically. And it was just like, it makes you confused about what's going on, because it's like, is this a bad thing, or is, what I mean? It just makes it a complicated situation.
Definitely, especially when it can make you feel afterwards that you were complicit in it, that
Hmm.
you allowed it to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not the case, even if your abuser tries to gaslight you after.
Yes.
um, any other questions? And then one other question that I actually wanted to kind of circle back to, which was, oh my gosh, how embarrassing. It was someone asked earlier, totally fail on my part. So I was going to circle back to a question that I don't feel like I answered properly. So to everyone listening, if that was your question and you don't feel like I answered it properly, DM me, and I'm very, very sorry. There's a lot going on in my brain right now with this really passionate, inspired conversation, and
Yeah,
better of me. Um, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground, Patrice. I don't
I
know.
think so too.
Right. Well, thank you all very, very much for joining us. Patrice, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for being here.
I'm glad that I did it. I was nervous, but I'm glad that I did it. Like, it was nice to be able to have the discussion about it, and I hope that somebody took something positive from it, from this conversation.
Oh, and judging by the comments, I think so. And that just popped in that maybe we can end with. How do you deal with a family that doesn't want to talk about your trauma and they shame you?
Mm. That's kind of hard to do. I mean, because it's hard to have that happen when it's somebody that you're close to, because I think it's just some people are just ignorant of the whole topic of sexual assault and rape. But I think for me, I think it just makes they're uncomfortable talking about it, so they try to find ways to just not talk about it, and they don't want to believe that bad things do happen to people. As far as like dealing with it, it's kind of like I said earlier. You kind of have to, I don't know, like take it one day at a time, because that's something that's hard to deal with, and every situation is different. So that's a hard one.
It is because those are people that you want to support you the most. I think like what Patrice said, a lot of times it's too hard for them to accept that
Hmm.
has happened to you. And I'm not saying it's okay, but I think that's where a lot of victim blaming and shaming comes from is, oh, well, if this happened to you, then it could happen to me. And
Hmm.
that's really scary for a lot of people to sit with. Or if it's, even if you have a great relationship with your parent and they do that, they might be thinking, I can't believe I wasn't able to protect them. I want to think that this, happened to them. And again, they need to do the work, read an article or something,
Exactly.
support people. Um, but ultimately, again, and it's unfortunate because it always falls on the survivor to do the work.
Exactly.
I wish more of that responsibility lied on the communities.
Hmm.
Um, but it really is just about doing the work, and as hard as it is, you know, acknowledging and processing that what happened was not your fault. And again, finding your community and people and trying to carve out little safe spaces for you, even if it's a few minutes a day. Um, and if there are people that are shaming you and bullying you for your assault, there's a way to, I know it's painful, try to cut them out of life. Um, Definitely very painful and easier said than done, but the more people who support you and the less people who villainize you in your life, the better.
Yeah, exactly. See, somebody had asked, how do you stay calm when you see the person that raped you?
Oof.
That hasn't happened to me yet. I hope it doesn't. Like I've talked to the person after the fact, maybe like almost a year after the fact, but I haven't physically seen the person. Um, so as far as staying calm, I think just try to get to a safe place immediately. I think that's what it is. Because for me, it hasn't, I haven't, fortunately enough, haven't had to experience it. And for me, I always try to play in my head, like, different scenarios, like, of how I would react. And they're not all of them are, none of them are like positive, like reactions. So I think just getting to a safe place, like, as fast as you can is like the best thing to do.
Definitely. And I saw someone earlier wrote about if you can, I think it's actually kind of more common than not for survivors to kind of have a safety exit plan where
Yeah. Hmm.
anyway. So staying true to that, and working on grounding every day, mindfulness, grounding exercises that help you kind of stay mindful and present in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So doing those when you're more in a wise mind, traumatized mind, practicing those. So then in those moments when it's like the world is, closing in on you, it might be a little easier to those out. But also running into your abuser, I don't think it's not ever going to be a good experience. I'm sorry to everyone
Giving me
who has to.
anxiety just thinking about it.
And you don't have to stay in any situation, just if you're around other people. If you're uncomfortable, leave. And also, because of what happened, is another Instagram page who has been commenting a lot, and they have a deck of affirmation cards. And they also wrote, having these cards or different affirmations that you kind of repeat to yourself. Or, having a self-care kit, maybe a certain smell or a mint or something that helps, again, ground you, or an affirmation you say to yourself that helps center and bring you peace. There are different ways, and if you want to hear more about grounding exercises, feel free to reach out. I think we are actually, this has been such a good conversation. I think we're getting close to getting the Insta Live limit. So I am going to wrap it up again. Thank you. These are the conversations that inspire me and just make me want to keep doing the work I'm doing.
Exactly. I think a lot of people are learning a lot from you. I really do. And I think, it's nice to be in a community where, people get you. And you don't even have to fully explain something. They're just like, okay, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think it's nice because I learned so much from everybody. And I think that's part of it's part of the experience, being able to, educate other people as well as, taking advice from them as well. So I've learned so much. I really did.
Right back at you. I mean, I truly mean this. You're one of my favorite pages. And whenever
Thank you. Likewise.
I like this more than once. Glad that we've connected, and I'll talk to you soon. And thank you all for joining in and being a part.
Thank you. It was nice talking to everybody. Thank you. All right, bye.
Bye.